Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Sweden and we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel a good number of times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the years, a few different styles, but I think it's fair to say that this brewery are best known for their different kinds of New England hazy IPA, but also for their big fruity juicy sours as well. So if those beer styles are ones that you're interested in, this is one of the Swedish breweries that I highly recommend that you check out. And I always keep an eye out for their new releases through Systembolaget. But we're going to have a look at one of their latest releases today. This beer is supposed to be very nice, and it has been quite a while actually since I last reviewed something from these guys, so it's certainly nice to return to them. So hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head up towards Gothenburg once again, Göteborg, as you would say in Swedish, the Swedish craft beer capital up there on the west coast. Got to get that Gothenburg catchphrase in when we're reviewing Gothenburg beers because it is just channel tradition these days. And for this review then, we are going to return to Fermenterarna. So this particular beer is called Skeleton Party. It comes in at 8% ABV and it's a New England Hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA. So this beer was released as part of the Lokal Småskaligt assortment through Systembolaget here in Sweden for March of 2022. I believe the exact release date this month was the 7th of March, if I'm not mistaken. But they released this one along with the Skeleton Pre-Party, which is a sour beer, and you will see me review that one in a couple of videos time. But I was just in the mood for this one more than the other one at the moment, to be honest with you. But yeah, this should be very nice. As I said earlier, this is a style that we know Fermenterarna can do very well. So yeah, the last time I reviewed one of their beers I think was back in like July or so, and they've been on the move, which is why I think there hasn't been too many beers released through Systembolaget of late. So yeah, we're starting to see new ones coming out again, which is always good to see. But like I say, check out this brewery if you're interested in New England hazies and big fruity juicy sours. But let's crack on with this one then and see how we go. So, as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Fermenterarna before, and we will no doubt return to these guys at some point in the near future because I really enjoy their beers. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you, and that's being added to very regularly, of course, because I'm living in Skåne in the south of Sweden and I love my Swedish beers. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit about Fermenterarna then. So, Fermenterarna, as I've told you before, was founded by Niklas Aronsson and Anna Claesson, and they founded the company together back in 2018. But the brewery was originally based in Strömstad in Västra Götaland, which is very close to the Norwegian border, actually supposed to be a very picturesque kind of fishing town, actually somewhere that I do want to visit. And yeah, they were quite well known locally there. But apparently the story of them getting involved in beer goes back to Niklas ordering a beer in a bar one day without really knowing what it was. And it turned out that this was the Tropic Thunder from Brewery, which in my opinion is one of the kind of cult classic Swedish sour beers, so one that I highly recommend that you check out. Whereas Anna, on the other hand, she has had a long history with things that ferment, and she runs the, she's also run the Kostas Trädgårdar restaurant as well, and she's fermented various different things, such as like sauerkraut and you know, and I think she did like, you know, sourdough bread and stuff like this for quite a wee while too. So this was the idea behind the name Fermenterarna. It kind of relates to Anna's hobby from what I understand. But the brewery started out with a very small 200-litre brew kit and tanks in late 2018, and they took a break to expand the company after their beers were very well received at different festivals. But they then got two 500-litre brew kits and had a total tank capacity of 17,000 litres, and they were aiming to brew 50,000 litres over the course of 2019, but they said that their equipment could allow them to brew up to 250,000 litres. So yeah, they were brewing at that time in Strömstad. They just gradually expanded and built up all the different recipes and things like that, focusing mainly on New England hazy IPAs and sour beers and stuff. But a little bit later on, in August of 2021, they moved to a new brewery in Hisingen in Gothenburg, and they took their equipment with them, and they received a new 3,000 litre brew kit a little bit later on in the year. And they do have plans at this facility to open up a tap room and restaurant and things like that in the quite near future. So we'll need to see how that plays out, because I would like to get up to Gothenburg again and interview some of the different brewers up there. I think that would be quite fun to do, actually. But according to Untappd, these guys have produced around 125 different kinds of beer as of March 2022, and as I've mentioned to you already, this brewery are known mainly for their different kinds of New England IPA and also their kind of fruity, juicy sour beers. So yeah, the Gozes, the Berliner Weisse type things, these are the ones that they are doing very, very nicely, I have to say. But that is all I can really tell you about Fermenterarna. Of course, if you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on. And you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's crack on then and have a little look at this beer itself. So I'll let you have a wee look at the artwork before we open it up. So as you can see, the skeletons are having a nice party in front of the palm trees on the beach there. So that is pretty cool. Not sure what the idea behind the name of this one is, but the artwork and things you always get from the artwork that you always get from Fermenterarna is very, very nice. But there you can see on the back of the can, there is the let me just bring that up to the camera, the Fermenterarna symbol. Tells you a wee bit about the beer here as well. The Skeleton Party, double dry hopped, double IPA. This one's a 440 milliliter can, and I believe I paid 55 Swedish kronor for this. So that is roughly €5.50, somewhere in the region of like £5 sterling then, and I guess we're maybe talking about $6.50, $7 American for those of you watching over there. But yeah, gold top on the can, which looks very, very nice. But yeah, don't think there's anything else we really need to say about that, to be honest with you. As I said earlier, released as part of the local Småska Ligged assortment through Systembolaget for March of 2021. But yeah, it should be pretty good. The hop bill in this beer, incidentally, I wrote this down from the Glassbanken page. So the hops in this one are Galaxy, Sabro, Laurel, Citra and Zythos. So Laurel and Zythos we don't know all that well. Zythos is an American hop produced by Hop Union, and it's named for the Greek word for beer. It gives you around 12% alpha acid, and it's supposed to give aromas and flavours of pineapple and tangerine with quite a piney green component to it. Laurel, on the other hand, is also an American hop. It's described as super noble, and it gives you between 10 to 12% alpha acid, supposed to give you a big lemony citrusy character, but also a little bit of dark fruit, and the green component is kind of herbal and peppery, apparently. So yeah, I've had Zythos and Laurel before, but not in quite some time actually. Galaxy we know quite well, that's an Australian hop, 14% alpha acid, big passion fruity notes normally, with a good bit of mango and pineapple and stuff like that. Sabro we also know quite well, that's American, 14% alpha acid, big tangerine oranges, and quite a nice little coconut component, and also a little bit of citra in there as well. So yeah, 14% alpha acid, American hop, big mango notes, and also a kind of lemon limey character as well. So yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about the beer, but we can crack it open now and get on with the tasting. So an 8% New England Hazy, Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA. Let's crack on and see how we go with this guy then. My first IPA from, or my first beer of any kind actually, from Fermenterarna for, yeah, about 8 months or something like that. Like I say, I'm pretty sure it was July was the last time I reviewed something from these guys. But I always really enjoyed the Fermenterarna New Englands because they were always just very smooth and soft actually. So yeah, this is definitely one of the Swedish breweries I recommend you check out if you're into your New England hazies. These guys in Duck Pond are the ones, they seem to be specialising in these New England hazies and fruity juicy sour beers. So if those are your things, as I say, Duck Pond and Fermenterarna are ones that you really want to check out. So anyway, as you can see, this beer looks quite interesting, I have to say. So before the head disappears on this one, you can see that it's poured with about a half finger of quite a bumpy, but I would still say perfect white head. That's fading away to be a nice kind of thin foamy layer right in the middle of the glass there, but there's a nice kind of thicker ring just sticking toward the edge of the glass too. But there's one or two big bubbles sticking towards the edge of the glass, a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the head there. But overall, it looks very nice. So you can see that this beer has a lovely, very, very bright, very pale kind of yellow colour to it. So that's quite interesting. Remember, the colour of your beer depends on 1, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. 2, the length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. Any barrel agent you do, or any adjuncts that you put in will affect the colour of the beer too, but that's not often the case when it comes to, we don't have to care about that so often when it comes to New England hazy IPAs. Now, the other thing I will say about this one is that it's not the soupiest and gloopiest of New England IPAs that I've come across. And remember, the level of haze in these beers depends on the wheat content, the oat content, and also to a degree the yeast as well. There's no real rule about that. It can vary from recipe to recipe and brewery to brewery. So yeah, bear that in mind with this one. But yeah, it's got a lovely, very kind of bright yellow colour actually, which I really quite like in this one. It reminds me of like a sort of mango juice. I always like comparing the New England IPAs to different fruit juices, because that's just what the appearance tends to remind me of. But yeah, certainly it looks the part, I have to say. I don't think there's anything else we really need to say about the appearance of this one. It looks exactly as you would expect for a New England hazy IPA. So yeah, let's have a look at the aroma then and see how we get on with this one. I'm very curious to see what this beer is going to have in store for us. Oh yeah. Yeah, so straight away it does kind of remind me. To be honest, well, it reminds me, you can tell straight away this is Fermenterarna, because it has that soft, kind of light, bready kind of vibe to it. But the thing is, just on first impression, it smells a little bit more kind of crisp and things than I remember the Fermenterarna stuff being before. But as I say, it's been about 7 months or something like that, 7-8 months since I last had a beer from these guys. So that's worth bearing in mind. That is worth bearing in mind as well, actually. Yeah, I don't think there's... this one's got a wee bit more of a kind of farmhousey vibe to it as well, which is quite interesting. Yeah, really, I always find this interesting when you go back to breweries that you haven't had in a wee while. You really start to pick up different things, because, like I say, my impression of the Fermenterarna beers was that they were always kind of very soft and very light and bready and things like that. But yeah, this one has a little bit more kind of zip and yeasty character to it, which is interesting. But you know, if your palate's constantly evolving. You have to remember this as well when you're tasting different beers. But it does smell really quite nice, this one. Let's break that aroma down for you a wee bit more and just describe it a little bit more kind of in depth. So when you sugar the beer up, it goes together pretty nicely. I mean, for me, the backbone of this one, you do get a little bit of bread crust, and there's a sort of soft but almost kind of crisp fresh white bread out of this one. But I find this New England IPA leans a little bit more towards the wheaty side of things. And the back of the nose, there is a good little bit of a wheaty, bitey character coming out of it. You can smell a little bit of zip from the wheat as well. And as I've explained many a time in the videos, for me there's 6 elements to the New England flavour. You can have the yeasty, kind of farmhousey character, the rye leaning, grainy sort of things. These are a bit more prominent in American brewed New England IPAs, but you've also got wheaty bitiness, oaty creaminess, barley malt breadiness, and sometimes some sweet, kind of sweeter malty character as well from the barley malt, the kind of brown sugars and stuff like that. Because yeah, a lot of the New England IPAs we get in Europe are a bit more based on the kind of Trillium wheaty bitey ones, or the Treehouse oaty creamy sort of things. As you know, you've obviously got other things over there in the States. The Alchemist, kind of more farmhousey type ones. But yeah, this beer to me smells a little bit more wheat leaning and kind of zippy in a sense. But you also get a little bit, the more that I smell of this, I get a little bit of a kind of Jacob's cream cracker out of it, little slightly woody notes as well. So it smells to me as if it has a wee bit of a more kind of yeasty note to it. There's almost a wee touch of a kind of vegetally sort of thing coming out of it too, which is very interesting. So yeah, you do get a little bit of the kind of creamy oaty character out of this one as well. So yeah, the oaty notes for me smell quite fresh and creamy in a sense, and as I've explained in reviews before, the oats are usually a good marker of how fresh your New England IPA is, because the younger it is, the more kind of creamy they're going to smell, whereas, and taste as well, but the older the beer is, the more kind of dry and things they're going to smell. But this one, to me, it does have a little bit of that kind of creaminess to it. The other thing I would add about this beer is that the malt base doesn't have such a kind of sweet component to it. It strikes me as being a little bit more kind of old school, and along the lines of like the Amazing Haze and Oranje, these more kind of bready leaning New England IPAs. But yeah, for me, this beer does have quite a bit of a citrusy zest to it, as well as a kind of, it's got that typical kind of soft, you know, barley malt, bready malt base to it, but I think it's got a wee bit more wheat to it and a wee touch of farmhousey character and things compared to some of the other Fermenterarna ones that I've had in the past. But the more you smell of it, the more the oat, I think, the more the oat kind of smoothness comes out of this beer. So that's quite interesting. I think we've said everything we need to about the malty, wheaty, the malty and yeasty side of the aroma, I should say. Let's have a little look at the green component then. So, on the green component, this beer for me, it has a little touch of earthiness to it, absolutely. I do get that. But the green component overall is quite bright and quite floral. It's got a lovely big kind of floral aromaticity to it. And as I say, it's very bright actually, and there's a lot of kind of citrusy, zesty note coming out of this one. So I wonder how much of that is coming from the zythos and the laurel in this. But Citra is obviously going to contribute to that as well, in fairness. So for me, it has got a nice floral character to it, but a big, grassy, zesty sort of note too. But I really like how, I do really like how this beer goes about its business in that sense. It gets a big thumbs up from me actually. Very, very nice. Yeah. A lot going on in this. Definitely a lot going on. But yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about the green component. The fruity side of things for me. Now, this one, you can smell some lovely juicy mango character from this. This is coming from the Citra and from the Galaxy. I do get a little bit of that pungent passion fruit in there as well, and that is most likely, that'll come from both Citra and Galaxy again. But, you know, it has, the fruity character's not overly pungent. This is quite, as I say, the big things for me are the big zesty grassy character, the bright floral notes, and the kind of almost lemony zesty character out of this beer. But yeah, fruit on the fruity side of things, a wee bit of passion fruit, a soft kind of, a slightly softer, juicier mango there. There are one or two little apricot-y kind of notes in this beer as well. But yeah, it's got, how would you say? It does have a few other, it has just got a few other subtleties too. So yeah, bit of mango, a little bit of pungent passion fruit, wee touch of apricot and things underneath. Then you've got that big lemony, limey, you've got a bit of that big lemony zesty sort of vibe coming out of the beer as well. So yeah, I really like how this one goes about its business. I think it's pretty, it is really quite interesting. So yeah, the aroma in this one, on the fruity side of things, it has got a bit of tropical note behind it, but I think it really leans towards that kind of lemony, zesty sort of thing. So that's going to be the laurel coming out of that. I get a little bit of tangerine out of it from the Sabro, and a wee bit of the coconut in the kind of top of the nose. But I don't find that overly pungent, to be quite honest with you. It is quite, it really is quite interesting in a sense from that perspective. So yeah, interesting beer from the aroma side of things. So as I always say, take a little bit of time to ponder over the aroma of your beer before you get stuck into it. But I think it's about time that we have a taste of this beer. So yeah, this one is the Skeleton Party, an 8% New England Hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA, from Fermenterarna in Gothenburg, formerly of Strömstad, on the Swedish west coast. Let's get stuck into this one. My first beer from these guys in quite some time. Slange, skål, cheers. Yeah. Man, as I always say, these guys really know what they're doing with this style, actually. It's difficult to compare it to some of the other ones that I've had in the past just because it's been a wee while, but this is definitely kind of in keeping with the Fermenterarna vibe, actually. It has that kind of. These beers have always had a little bit of lightness to them, but they've always been very kind of smooth and soft and bready and stuff like that. And this one, it really just picks up where I kind of left off with this brewery, to be honest. I'm going to say a massive thumbs up to Fermenterarna once again. It's a lovely, lovely beer. Really like this one. Yeah, solid New England IPA, but we know that these guys are very capable within this style, so it's not a surprise. So, yeah, where do we start with this one? Yeah, on the first impression, it's a very smooth, and it's a lot more. This beer, I would say, it's got that soft kind of bready barley malt vibe to it, but it is a little bit more oaty in character than the aroma would have you believe. The green component's not quite as pungent as I thought it was going to be. It has this whole kind of smooth vibe going on, and the fruity character, while it does have a fair degree of zestiness to it. It does actually have a little bit more. It does actually have a little bit more kind of tropical note to it as well. So yeah, that's pretty interesting. I do have to say, I'm just trying to remember what hops in it. Galaxy, Sabro, Laurel, Citra, and Zythos. I need to try and remember that throughout this video. But yeah, this is another solid New England double IPA from Fermenterarna. I'm not surprised. Let's try and break it down for you then and just describe it a wee bit more in depth as we always do. As always say, sugar it around your mouth a little bit and just let your palate adjust. But yeah, really nice to return to these guys after what feels like quite a long time. But yeah, middle third of your palate then. So base of that middle third of your palate, you can feel there's a soft sort of fresh white bread crust there. That forms the backbone of the beer. On top of that, you get this kind of soft, fluffy, fresh, white bready character out of this one. So yeah, a little bit of bread crust, soft, fluffy, white bready note there, and then on top of that, you get a little bit of a more kind of you can feel the wheat sort of thickening it out a little bit. So yeah, it's a very straight shooting beer, this one. And I think the further you go into the aftertaste, on top of that kind of wheaty layer, you get a little bit of a more kind of oaty, creamy note to this one too, which I very much like. But I was kind of picking up the same in the aroma. It was the more that you smell of it, the more oatiness that you got out of it. So yeah, this is a really interesting beer from that perspective. So, yeah, as I say, white bread crusty base, the kind of soft, fluffy white bread from the barley malt layer, a slightly thickening wheaty layer, can we say. Then on top of that, you've got the more smooth, oaty, creamy notes coming out of the beer. So yeah, I do really like how that goes together in this one. So it gets a thumb up. It gets a thumbs up from me in that regard. Yeah. Yeah, so you can feel on top of the wheaty layer with this beer, you can feel as you go down the kind of middle line, as you go down the middle line of your tongue, there's definitely a wee bit more of a kind of dense, you do get a little bit of that more dense, oaty character out of the beer, which I do really enjoy. So yeah, you can feel the dense oatiness down the kind of middle line of your palate, the middle trench if you like, and then as you spread out toward the edges of the palate, the beer, it just gets a little bit lighter and you start to get some of the kind of sweeter elements out of the OT note as well. But right in the dead centre of your palate, you can feel there's a little small circle there, and you get a little bit of that kind of Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy note out of the beer. So that's where you're getting some of the kind of slightly barley malt sweetness. And I wouldn't be surprised again if this has got a little bit of golden promise or something in it. And there's maybe a tiny little hint as you move out from that central circle. There's maybe a tiny little hint of like a. There's maybe a tiny little hint of a. What would you say, a McVitie's digestive biscuit sort of thing. So yeah, there's a wee bit of that going on too. Yeah, so one or two wee interesting notes there as well. So I do like how that goes about its business. Yeah, really nice malt base on this. The way that Fermenterarna do their New Englands, I think, is very nice. They find this balance between the soft kind of barley malt side of things and then the thickening wheat and the smooth oats. They've just got a really nice balance to their malt base, and I think when it comes to this style, the malty side of things is always just kind of undervalued a little bit these days. But I really like how Fermenterarna do that. Other than that, I would say there's maybe a wee touch of a Jacob's cream cracker flavour kind of evolves from the malty base in this one, but other than that, I don't think there's anything else we need to say about that middle third of the palate. Let's focus on the back third of the palate then. So the border region between middle third and back third of your palate, you get a little bit of that bready build-up again, a wee bit of a more bread crusty character, but yeah, the base of that back third of the palate is a little bit more kind of, it is a wee bit more kind of, you get a little bit of the bread crust, but again it's quite smooth and quite dry. You can feel the soft white bready layer is a little bit thicker, maybe a little bit of the wheat comes into the back of the mouth as well, and it does give you a wee bit of bitiness. Like I say, I feel that this beer has a wee bit more wheaty bitiness compared to some of the ones that I remember from Fermenterarna before, but that might just be because I've not had something from them in quite a wee while. So yeah, you do get a bit of the wheaty bitiness in the back third of the palate, which I do enjoy, but on top of that, you get you do get a little bit of the you do get a little bit of the kind of yeasty kind of character out of the beer as well, which is nice. So the yeasty notes in this one, again, they give you a little bit of a kind of farmhousey, crackery sort of thing, but I do quite enjoy that, I have to say. So yeah, sitting on top. Yeah, it's sitting on top of the kind of wheaty bitey sort of things. You can feel that yeasty note there. It feels like a slightly more dense white bready character. There's a little bit of that soft bread crusty note to it, then a wee bit of a kind of crackery, woody sort of note in it. So I really like how that goes together. But on the back third of the palate, you can feel the flavour is a little bit taller there. So it's a little bit taller. It's a little bit taller as you kind of come further forward, but then as you move into that middle third of the palate, the flavour just condenses down a little bit and squashes together. But yeah, the way that the malty, yeasty side of things in this beer works together is really nice. Let's focus on the green component and the fruity side of this beer. So back corners of the palate, there's definitely a wee touch of earthiness there. You do get a little bit of herbal component out of this one, which, as I say, I think is the laurel, but then as you move towards the front corners of the palate, you get a wee bit of that more kind of spicy, floral, aromatic sort of thing out of it. Around the front curve of the palate, it's a little bit lighter and grassy as well. But yeah, for me, the green component, the further you go into the aftertaste with it, it shows a little bit more of that kind of herbal and slightly earthy side of things. So yeah, that's interesting. Remember though, your New England IPAs rely on late addition and dry hopping, which late addition hopping will give you a little bit of bitterness, but mainly flavour and aroma. Dry hopping is all about the flavour and aroma. So you've got that in there. But yeah, West Coast IPAs had those two in addition to early addition hopping, which gives you a lot of bitterness. So bear that in mind. But yeah, the green component in this one is quite smooth. I think overall it's fair to say that. But yeah, you can definitely get some of that herbally note from the laurel in this, which is quite interesting. So I wonder if that's been used as a little bit more of an early edition hop. It didn't really say how the hopping was kind of broken up in this one between dry hopping and late edition or whatever. But let's focus on the fruity component of the beer then. So the front third of your palate, the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again, you get a little bit of a kind of bready build up in this one. So I really like that with this beer. So yeah, a little bit of a kind of bread crusty character there. Then the base of the front third of the palate is a sort of soft white bready character. So that again goes together really well. So yeah, a wee bit of bread crust in there, but then a soft white berry note, a little bit of the oaty smoothness in there as well. Then on top of that, you've got that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So toward the back of that front third of the palate, you do get a wee bit of the more pungent passion fruit from the Citra. From the Citra and from the Galaxy. But as you move further forward, you get a big juicy mango out of this one. Again, that's going to come from both hops. But underneath, you do get little hints of there's a wee touch of like an apricot and a kind of pineapple-y note in there as well as you reach the middle of that front third of your palate. But as you move into the front half of that front third of your palate, I should say, underneath you can definitely feel a little bit of the coconut from the Sabro in this one. But on top of that, there's a nice kind of, you do get a bit of the light tangerine, but you get a slightly more oily orange, which I guess is coming from the Zythos. In this one, you do get that, but the pineapple if you're sitting in the dead centre of that front third of your palate, I think there's quite a nice pineapple-y note to this one, and again, that sort of lingers the further you go into the aftertaste too. So yeah, for me, bit of passion fruit, bit of mango, quite a lot of pineapple for sure, and then just a wee bit of a softer tangerine and coconut note on the kind of front third of your palate and the fruity side of things. But once again, this is another very, very nice beer from Fermenterarna, and it lives up to the standards that I would hold these guys to. So yeah, big thumbs up to them. My first one in quite a wee while, and I've certainly enjoyed it. Let's round off the review with a quick look at the mouthfeel then. So for me, this beer actually, it's remarkably drinkable for an 8% New England double, to be honest. Right in the middle of the spectrum, mid-bodied to top end of mid-bodied, smooth carbonation. Wee touch of creamy character to it, but again it still has this typical kind of Scandinavian clean mouthfeel to it. But yeah, very smooth beer, but we always got this from Fermenterarna. In terms of the bitterness out of it, what would we say? To be honest, I think this is a fairly standard. I think it is a fairly standard kind of 30 or 40 IBU bitterness. It's a bit difficult to say, to be honest with you. I think it might be 30. It doesn't feel that bitter, but in fairness, you do get a bit of the floral note lingering there, so it could be 40. And I think it's better to give these New England doubles just a little bit more bitterness, so maybe 40. But the malt base, as we said, lovely and soft and bready, wee bit of graininess there, little tiny touch of sweetness, but this is more like an old school New England IPA in that sense. It leans towards that wheaty bready side of the spectrum, and the fruity note for me, it's got a good balance between tropical and kind of citrusy zest, but it works. It's a very nicely done beer, and we can't ask for any more from Fermenterarna. So a big thumbs up from me. So I think we can leave it at that. This one was the Skeleton Party, an 8% New England Hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA from Fermenterarna, now in Hisingen in Gothenburg, Göteborg. So yeah, nice to return to these guys after quite a little while. My apologies that this review was a little bit longer. This always happens. I'm filming this one when I'm a little bit tired, and that's just how it goes. But yeah, thank you again for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Fermenterarna as well, and we will no doubt return to these guys at some point in the near future. In the meantime, check out my social media, check out Fermenterarna's social media, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Slàinte, skål, and cheers.